I invested every spare dollar to escape debt and finally breathe again. When the numbers climbed, everyone cheered me on, until the market turned and the silence hit. Every night, lying awake, staring at the cracked ceiling of my one-bedroom apartment, wondering how the hell I let it get this far. My name is Chris, and back then, I was drowning. Not in water, but in debt, shame, and this constant tightness in my chest that made it hard to breathe. I was 34 years old, working 2 jobs I hated, and still falling behind. Every check got swallowed before I even cashed it. Car loan, credit cards. That one medical bill I tried to ignore until they sold it to a collector who called like clockwork. Rent kept creeping up. Gas was through the roof. And groceries? I started skipping meals just to make things stretch. I remember standing in the checkout line once, holding a bag of rice, peanut butter, and off-brand coffee. My card declined. Not once, twice. The cashier gave me that look, not mean, just tired, like she had seen it 1,000 times. I mumbled something and walked out empty-handed. Sat in my car for a good 10 minutes before I could even turn the key. That was the night I knew something had to give. That was the night I made a decision. I was not going to get by anymore. I was going to get out. Completely. I started reading everything I could about investing. Not just retirement stuff or some slow savings plan. I mean real investing. The kind that multiplies, the kind people write books about. The kind of strategy you only hear about after someone makes it big. I sold everything I did not need. No more Netflix, no more beer, no more takeout. Hell, I started walking to work just to save gas. Every spare dollar, literally every one, I poured into the market. Stocks, index funds, crypto, even a few sketchy plays that made my hands sweat when I clicked buy. People said I was reckless. My mom cried when she found out I had emptied my tiny savings to buy more shares. My boss at the warehouse caught me watching stock tickers during breaks and said, "You trying to win the lottery or something?" But it was not about luck. It was about discipline, courage, belief that if I stayed sharp, if I outworked the fear, I could claw my way out of this hole. No backup plan, no safety net, just forward. I built a spreadsheet to track every move, every penny. I checked it 20 times a day. I read white papers on my lunch break. I followed the market like it was my religion. I cut the noise out of my life. No parties, no distractions, just focus, just numbers. And slowly, very slowly, the numbers started to move. One night, I refreshed the dashboard and saw my portfolio had finally passed 5 figures. That might not sound like much, but for a guy who used to cry over $20 overdraft fees, it felt like I had cracked the code. I went to sleep that night with something I had not felt in years. Hope. But hope is a tricky thing. It makes you feel like you are safe. Like maybe, just maybe, you are about to escape. And that is exactly when life reminds you that nothing comes without a price. Hope can be addicting. I do not mean that in some poetic way. I mean really addicting. Like the kind that hits your brain and makes you believe you are finally in control. That first time I saw my account hit $10,000, I felt invincible. Like I had finally figured it out. Like all that sacrifice, the skipped meals, the cold showers, the nights staring at the ceiling, had finally meant something. I started walking taller at work. I had a little secret. While my coworkers were talking about the game or weekend plans, I was checking charts on my phone in the break room. And not just checking, understanding them. I could speak the language now. I knew the dips, the trends, the risk patterns. One guy I worked with, Darnell, noticed me scribbling notes during lunch one day. He leaned over and said, "You day trading now?" I smiled and told him I was investing. Not gambling, building. He asked me to show him what I was doing, and the next day, I brought my laptop. Showed him the graphs, the gains, the strategies. Before I knew it, a few other guys started hovering around during break time. What started as curiosity turned into respect. And that felt good, really good. I started getting messages from old high school friends who saw one of my posts about a recent win. "Hey man, what are you into these days? I heard you're doing something with stocks." Even my cousin, the one who used to clown on me for being broke, sent me a DM that said, "Yo, can you help me flip some cash?" I never thought I would be the guy people looked to for advice. But suddenly I was. My portfolio kept climbing. I passed 15 grand, then 20. That was the magic number. The amount I had once owed in total debt. I remember staring at that balance and just whispering to myself, "You did it." It felt like the beginning of a new chapter. I paid off one of the credit cards, the one that had followed me around like a ghost for 5 years. I had just enough left over to treat myself to a decent dinner. Nothing crazy, just a steak, a real drink, and a seat by the window. I sat there alone, watching traffic roll by, thinking, this is the start of everything. I was not rich, not even close, but I could see the path now. I could feel freedom just a few hills away. I even started planning for the future again. Maybe I would launch a side business. Maybe I would buy my way out of warehouse work. Maybe I would move somewhere warm, somewhere quiet. A place where no one knew me as the guy who never had enough. But the thing about success? It gets loud. Friends started asking me for tips, advice, even money. Just a little investment, they would say. Family members who used to ignore my texts were now calling to check in. My sister casually mentioned how her car was acting up. My uncle sent me a long email about a business idea involving vending machines in church lobbies. At first, I laughed it off. But part of me liked the attention. I liked feeling like somebody. After years of being invisible, this spotlight felt warm. But spotlights cast shadows too. And I was about to find out what was hiding in mine. Success changes the air around you. You do not notice it at first, but suddenly every room feels different, like people are leaning in just a little closer. I started getting invited places again. Barbecues, birthday dinners, things I had quietly stopped getting invited to years ago when I was always too busy or broke. Now nobody said that word around me. They said things like disciplined, brave, sharp. That word brave came up a lot. My sister Megan said it over coffee one afternoon, stirring her cup slowly like she was thinking hard. She told me she admired how fearless I was, how I took risks most people were too scared to touch. She said she wished she had my courage. I nodded, smiled, acted humble. Inside, something swelled. People love a comeback story, especially when it is not theirs. I started sharing small updates online. Nothing flashy, just general stuff. Screenshots cropped tight, percentages instead of totals. But people filled in the blanks themselves. They always do. Comments rolled in. Fire emojis. Messages asking what I was buying next. Guys I barely remembered from my past calling me man and brother like we were close. One night, I caught myself refreshing my notifications more than my portfolio. That should have scared me. It did not. The market kept rewarding me. A risky play I almost skipped doubled in weeks. Another one exploded overnight. I woke up one morning, checked my phone, and just stared. My hands actually shook. I was up more money than I had ever seen in my life. Not on paper. On my screen. Real. I remember pacing my apartment barefoot, heart racing, whispering that same phrase over and over. This is it. This is it. I upgraded my phone. Nothing crazy, just something new. I bought decent shoes. I even helped my mom with a bill she did not ask for, but clearly needed. She cried and told me she was proud of me. That alone felt worth everything. But with every win, the pressure grew heavier. I stopped sleeping again, but this time it was different. Before it was fear. Now it was vigilance. I watched the charts late into the night, convinced that if I blinked, I would miss something. Every dip made my stomach flip. Every spike made me greedy. People kept telling me how smart I was, how I had a gift for this. I started believing them. Started thinking maybe I was built for this life. That the struggle had been training. Then came the first crack. It was small, barely noticeable. A sudden dip that should have corrected quickly. I told myself it was normal. Healthy even. I doubled down instead of pulling back. Conviction, right? That is what separates winners from quitters. But when I refreshed the screen again, the numbers did not bounce. They slid. Just a little. Enough to make my chest tighten. I told myself to stay calm. Markets breathe. Everyone knows that. I had read that 100 times. Still, for the first time in months, I did not feel confident. I felt watched. And somewhere deep down, a quiet thought crept in. One I pushed away as fast as I could. What happens if this turns? The screen blinked again. Red. And it did not stop. It happened slow. Not a crash. Not yet. Just slippage. The kind of steady decline that tricks you into thinking it will fix itself. First, it was a dip on a Tuesday. Nothing major. I brushed it off like a cold breeze. The next day, another percent shaved off the top. No big deal. Markets fluctuate. That was the mantra. Everyone said it. I said it. But deep down, I started checking my portfolio like a guy checking his pulse after chest pain. It became obsessive. I stopped watching movies. Skipped music. My eyes were always locked on charts, dashboards, alerts. One night, I even dreamed about a red candle bleeding across my screen. I woke up in a sweat, checked my phone at 4 in the morning, and saw it. A 30% loss on one of my biggest positions. Gone. Just like that. I stared at the screen, blinking hard like maybe I was misreading it. But there it was. And worse, it was not stopping. I read the news. One of the companies had posted weak earnings. Missed by a few cents. The kind of thing that used to be forgiven. But this time, the market was not in the mood. And that was the thing nobody tells you when you're chasing this dream. The mood can shift without warning. The fear spread fast. Not just with that stock. The whole market started pulling back. I could feel it like a storm coming in from every direction. Analysts were using words like overheated and correction. Some were calmer, but others were saying things I did not want to hear. I tried to play it cool. Shifted a few positions. Hedged with some safer funds. But I was late. Always one move behind. And the more I tried to outmaneuver it, the faster the ground gave way under my feet. My portfolio dropped below 20,000 in 3 days. Then 15. Then I stopped looking. Just stared at the home screen like maybe if I waited long enough, it would magically climb back. Friends started texting. Yo, you seeing this? Man, what are you doing with your positions? You buying the dip? I gave vague answers. Said I was watching the trends. But truth was, I had no plan. No parachute. No idea what I was doing anymore. I had tied everything to this. All my extra income. Every dollar I could squeeze. I even borrowed $5,000 from a low-interest line of credit to boost the strategy. And now that debt was growing claws. I stopped answering calls. Stopped opening emails from the brokerage app. Stopped replying to all the people who once cheered me on. Because deep down, I knew what was coming. And then, on a Friday morning, it happened. The crash. The one everyone swears will never come, until it does. That Friday started like any other. I got up early, made coffee I could barely afford, and sat down at the same rickety desk where I had once celebrated my first win. But this time, the screen did not greet me with green. It was all red. Blood red. The index one had trusted like a seatbelt, gone. The blue chip stock I had called unshakable, sliced in half. Even my so-called safe plays, the boring ones I kept for balance, were tanking like they were caught in a whirlpool. I clicked through everything. Refreshed. Closed tabs. Reopened them. Still red. Still falling. No bottom. No bounce. It was like someone had pulled the plug and the whole market was circling the drain, and I was chained to the side. I opened the brokerage app just to check, even though I already knew. The number I saw made my throat close. 6,000. That was all that was left. From over 25,000 at the peak, down to 6. In just a couple weeks. I sat there frozen. Could not even blink. I did not cry. I just stared, like maybe if I focused hard enough, time would rewind and give me one more chance to play it right. The worst part? I still owed 4,000 on that damn line of credit. Which meant I was not even down, I was negative. I logged into my bank account and stared at a balance just north of 300. Rent was due in 5 days. My phone bill was already late. My gas tank was hovering on fumes. I had bet everything on this. And now I had nothing. That same afternoon, I checked my messages, hoping, maybe, someone would reach out. One of the guys who used to ask me for advice. A friend who used to tag me in those grind never stops posts. Nothing. The inbox was dead quiet. No missed calls. No new texts. The group chat I had been in for months, the one that used to light up with every market move, was silent. No jokes. No memes. No talk of diamond hands. Just gone. People vanished. Like I was contagious. Like my loss might rub off on them if they stuck around too long. I remember standing at my window that evening, watching the sky turn the color of ash. It had rained earlier, and now the streets looked like wet concrete veins, empty and cold. And I kept thinking about how fast the cheering had stopped, how loud everyone was when I was climbing, and how quiet they had become now that I had fallen. It is strange how fast people disappear when you stop winning. I used to get 20 messages a day. Now, I could go 2 days without hearing from a single soul. Not even a "you good?" or "what happened?" Just silence. At first, I made excuses for them. Told myself they were busy, or maybe the crash had hit them too. Maybe everyone was just regrouping. But after a week, it became obvious. They were not regrouping. They were retreating. The guys who used to call me a genius had moved on. I saw them posting again, different plays, different hype, tagging other people now. People who were still hot. My name had vanished from the circle. Even Darnell stopped showing up at lunch. He had been the first to ask for advice. Used to send me screenshots, ask what I thought. Now he sat on the other side of the break room, scrolling his phone, never once making eye contact. I got the message. I tried reaching out to a couple friends, real ones, I thought. No mention of the market. Just casual. Hey, you want to grab coffee? Or are you around this weekend? One read the message and never replied. Another said he was slammed with work. The third sent a thumbs up emoji and nothing else. That one actually stung the most. Even my own sister started dodging calls. She had no problem calling when she thought I was flush with cash. Back when I slipped her $200 for groceries and she spent it on concert tickets. Now she said things like, I'll call you later, and I'm in a bad spot too. Family dinners stopped coming up. Nobody asked if I was coming by. Nobody mentioned my name. My mom. She meant well, but every time we spoke, she just said, maybe next time, do something more stable. She said it gently, but it landed like a shovel to the chest. I stopped checking my portfolio. There was no point. The 6,000 became 5, then 4. I had to cash out what was left just to survive. Rent, groceries, gas. The account was empty before the month was over. The dreams I had, the business, the escape, the freedom, they all faded into static. I went back to working 6 days a week. Overtime whenever I could get it. I ate canned soup and crackers. I counted every dollar like it was glass. No more spreadsheets. No more charts. No more messages. Just me. Alone. Picking up the pieces. And that was when I realized something. The worst part was not the money I lost. It was learning how many people were only clapping because they thought I was winning. I started making lists. Not the kind you tape to your fridge or scribble on napkins. These were different. They were quiet. Personal. I kept them in a cheap notebook I bought from a gas station. No title on the cover. Just black pages and ballpoint ink. At the top of one page, I wrote, who showed up when I was losing. The page stayed mostly blank. I thought of Megan, my sister. The same one who once said I was brave. She went dark the second I told her I had to sell everything just to make rent. She did not even fake concern. Just told me, well, you knew the risks. Then asked if I could still spot her $20 until Friday. She is not on the list. I thought of my old friend Cal from high school. Used to call me a grind king. Said I was going to inspire the whole block. I reached out when things crashed. Told him I was hurting. That I was trying to stay afloat. He replied with, damn, that's crazy. He is not on the list either. Even Darnell. I caught him talking about me to another guy at work. Did not know I was in the hallway. I heard him say, he flew too close to the sun, man. Should have known better. Like I was some myth. Not a guy who once taught him how to read a balance sheet. I stopped writing after that. The page stayed blank. But on another page, I started a different list. What I learned. And this one, it filled fast. I learned that attention is rented, not earned. That most people will root for your courage, as long as it makes them feel safe. That money brings people to your door, but loss? Loss makes them run like you are on fire. And the one that hit the hardest? I had made my identity out of being the guy who was making it. That was the trap. Not the crash. Not the numbers. It was how much of my worth I had tied to other people clapping. Once the applause stopped, I realized I had no idea who I was without it. That is the kind of truth that sits in your gut and doesn't leave. I sat on the floor of my apartment one night, surrounded by silence, and thought about all the quotes I used to post. Stuff like, discipline is freedom, and pain now, peace later. I believed in them. I still do, actually. But what I had missed, what none of those motivational videos tell you, is that peace is not always loud. Sometimes peace is the quiet that follows when everyone else walks away and you are left standing there with your failure and no one to perform for. That is where rebuilding starts. Not when you are winning, but when no one's watching. Rebuilding did not start with a big speech or some movie moment. It started with me taking the trash out. That sounds dumb, I know, but it had been piling up. Rotten bananas, empty cans, old mail, just sitting there in the corner, stinking up the place. I had been ignoring it for weeks, telling myself I would deal with it tomorrow. But tomorrow never came, because I was too busy pretending I still had a future. That night, I tied the bag, hauled it downstairs, and dumped it in the bin. Cold air slapped me in the face on the way back up the steps, and something about that, just that stupid cold, hit different. Like I was finally awake again. Back upstairs, I stood in my kitchen and just looked around. Peeling laminate floor. Flickering overhead light. That ugly chipped mug I still drank coffee from every morning. It was not much, but it was mine, and I was still here. That counted for something. I started small. Cleaned the apartment. Got rid of the old tracking notebooks. Deleted the trading apps from my phone. Blocked a few numbers I knew I should have cut off months ago. I unsubscribed from the gurus. Turned off the alerts. And for the first time in a long time, I just sat. No charts. No noise. Just stillness. I picked up extra hours at work. Not because I thought it would change my life overnight, but because it gave me something solid to hold on to. Real effort. Real results. One shift at a time. One night, I stayed late cleaning up the warehouse floor. The manager walked by, noticed the place was spotless, and said, "You keep this up, I might just put you in for supervisor." That word used to mean nothing to me. Supervisor. Warehouse. Whatever. But now, it felt like a thread. A thin line pulling me out of the pit. I took it. No fanfare. No announcement online. Just a quiet yes. That same week, I saw someone from the old investor group at the gas station. He was filling up his car, brand new, spotless, and talking loud on the phone about riding the rebound. He saw me. I nodded. He nodded back, like he could not quite place me. He probably thought I was out of the game. He was right. But what he did not know was that I was not trying to get back into the game. I was building a life that did not need the game at all. No chasing. No performance. No more tying my worth to who cheered the loudest. The applause had faded. The crowd had cleared. And all that was left was me, sweeping a warehouse floor at 11 p.m., wondering why the silence suddenly felt like peace. A few weeks later, something strange happened. People started coming back. Little by little. Like nothing ever happened. Darnell saw me in the break room and suddenly remembered how I used to be real sharp with that finance stuff. Asked if I was getting back in. Said there was a new wave coming. My sister called out of the blue. Told me she was checking in. Then asked if I had seen this new crypto trend. Just wondering what your thoughts are. Even Cal hit me up. Said he had a little side money and wanted to know if I could look over a business idea. Said he remembered I used to be good with this kind of thing. It was like the whole world hit reset. Like my crash had been erased. But I had not forgotten. They were not reaching out because they cared. They were sniffing around because they thought I might be winning again. They thought the wheel had turned back in my favor, and they wanted a seat next to the next ride up. That is when it clicked for real. I had not just lost money. I had lost illusions. The shiny wrappers around fake friendships. The forced smiles. The kind of support that disappears the moment you are no longer useful. I told Darnell I was not trading anymore. He blinked and said, "Damn, really?" Like he had just learned Santa was not real. I told my sister I was not doing thoughts anymore. Just trying to live simply. She got quiet. Said she understood. Then hung up. And Cal? I told him I hoped his business did well. He never replied. The silence this time? It did not sting. Because I finally knew what it was made of. It was not betrayal. It was clarity. They were not my people. Not really. They liked the version of me that made them feel inspired. Made them feel like maybe they could win too. But when I stopped being proof of their fantasy, they ghosted me like I had never existed. And you know what? Good. Let them go. Because for the first time, I was not building for applause. I was not chasing their respect. I was rebuilding from rock bottom with one rule. Nobody claps for me but me. I do not remember the exact day it happened. Just that I woke up, looked around my apartment, and realized something was different. I was not afraid. The debt was still there. The paychecks were still tight. Life had not magically gotten easier. But that constant pressure in my chest, the weight I used to carry like a second spine, was gone. Because I finally understood the truth. I did not fail. I trusted the wrong things. I thought money would save me. I thought the market was my ladder out. I thought if I just played smart, stayed focused, and sacrificed hard enough, I could buy my way into a life worth living. And for a minute, it worked. Until it didn't. What crushed me was not the market. It was tying my value to how high the numbers climbed. It was needing other people to say, "You made it," before I believed it myself. But here is the part one never expected. Losing everything was the best thing that could have happened to me. Because once the dust settled, once the fakes vanished, once the noise stopped, I finally saw who was still standing with me. Me. No more followers. No more likes. No more pretending to be the guy with the plan. Just a man with a mop in his hand, a few bills left to pay, and a quiet kind of strength that nobody could take. I started saving again. Slowly. Not for a big win. Not to post about. Just to breathe. Just to feel the ground under my feet. I took a free budgeting course at the local library. Got real about what I needed versus what I wanted. I sold the last of the stuff I had held onto for when things bounced back. Because I am not waiting on a bounce. I am building something sturdier. A life that is boring on the outside but solid to the core. A life with no borrowed dreams, no desperate bets. Just steady work, clear eyes, and peace that does not come from praise. And now, when someone says, "You used to be that guy who almost made it," I just smile. Because they do not know. I did make it, just not in the way they measure. And this time, I am not building anything to impress them. This time, it is for me.